Every year in the summertime, I usually take a week off, and usually it's by myself because the thing I like to do for vacation, none of my friends like to do. I love history. So I usually take a week and I go on some adventure. This year I think I'm going to take a few days and go to Charleston. I've heard that Charleston is a beautiful city with history. A few years ago I went to Washington, D.C., and I spent almost 10 days in Richmond and in Washington. I was going to go to Gettysburg, but I ran out of time and energy. And it was memorable because on my first day, I broke off my front tooth at the gum, and the last day, I fell and sustained 5 stress fractures on my right foot. So it was really memorable, especially for our insurance company. But as I adventured throughout Washington, D.C., there were so many things to see. I'm a Lincoln fan, so I went to Ford's Theater, and the house across the street where he passed from this life to the next, and the Washington Monument, all those things. But the one that always kind of strikes me at the core is the Marine Corps Memorial. I had 2 brothers in the United States Marine Corps. One has gone home to God now, and my brother Bob, who is 10 years older than me, served in Vietnam and was wounded and has PTSD or whatever that is still to this day. To see those men holding up that American flag is just a powerful thing, especially if you are aware of any part of the American history in World War II. That island where that occurred was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, both on both sides, the Japanese and the Americans, but holding up that flag. And that's what we do today in some ways. We hold up our country as imperfect as we are, with the history soiled by slavery and how we treated Native Americans and race relations and all that. And yet we're a nation that is still a great experiment. For we're the only nation that is a nation completely of immigrants, of people who have come from other places to this land. I share with you a story. A number of years ago, I was with the Cardinal and we were in the Holy Land. And it's always great to travel with a cardinal, even if you're a bishop. Cardinals are big shots, And we were invited to have a meal with an Armenian bishop, Orthodox bishop. And he looked as mean as he had a big scar. He looked like St. Peter on a bad day, And I was sitting next to him, and for the first 15 minutes, he spoke about how all these relatives were living in Detroit and Chicago and Washington and here. It seems like his whole family was in the United States. And then the conversation shifted, and he began to attack the United States. You dictate this, and the clothing you wear, and the music you play, and it was like Jekyll and Hyde. And Cardinal Regali, in his great sense of diplomacy, since he was a diplomat, said, well, if the United States is so bad, how come your entire family lives there? It's all perspective. Today we celebrate a beautiful day, Independence Day, but we also celebrate the Lord's Day. And in the gospel reading that we have today, it's a beautiful reading. It's Jesus appeared in his native land and he preaches. And some people, what did they say? Who is this guy? We know his dad. Well, they didn't know exactly his dad, but they knew Joseph and Mary and his family. And some listened to what he had to say and others rejected it. Being a priest now almost 36 years in December, I know that the one group that I cannot preach to is my own family. I mean, when I would speak to my Aunt Stella about this or that, and when she says, oh, come on, Ricky, it kind of loses the perspective of I'm supposed to be the teacher in the family. But Jesus was facing that too. They accepted him and they listened to him. Some believed and some said, I can't take it because I knew him as a little runt, in Nazareth, a little guy. We live in a church, we live in a world that is divided and broken. The United States, the land of the free, united yet one, many yet one, as our national motto tells us. And yet we've seen in these last years, and probably it was more present too throughout our history, but now we have social media, Facebook and all those different things. And the cracks in the fabric of our nation are very apparent. Or even in this last election, I wonder how many pies were thrown across the table at Thanksgiving, getting ready for this or that, the anger that people have. Anger about things that are so detached from really who we are. You know, about politicians who live far away or who come and go, and yet we're willing to break a family or argue with a relative or someone that we love because of what we believe in. And our nation has become a country where we don't listen to each other. We talk at each other, but we don't listen to each other. And the same is true of the church. Right now we have the Orthodox, those who are true believers, and those who are liberals who like to sing Kumbaya at Mass with guitars, God forbid. And everything all the way across. And the pick and choose experience, they call it the cafeteria. Yes, I believe the church can teach this, but no way can I accept that teaching. 50% of people in the United States, Catholics, believe that abortion is all right. 50% say no. Just like Jesus in his own town, who are we called to be in our families, in our workplaces, in our lives? Are we called to be rabble-rousers? To be people of division? Or is it the job of a Christian as a Catholic? Is it our ability to bring people together, not to compromise our positions, our principles, those things that are guiding to us? But we as a church and as people, you know, we look at a situation and sometimes we base it on our own politics. You would not believe the letters or the conversations that bishops had throughout the world when we voted on whether or not to make a statement on the Eucharist and Catholic politicians. And some would say the bishops are involved in political matters. Take away their tax-exempt status. And yet, what we voted on was just a document that says, what is the Eucharist really about? Do we as a nation or as individuals still believe in the concept of sin? That there is a right and there is a wrong. And it's not necessarily a political thing, but it's a moral thing. Right and wrong, sin and understanding of sin. If our nation is to survive, because the church will, because the church is united by Jesus. St. Paul tells us the church is made of many members, and that Jesus is the head. But our nation, it's different because nations come and go. Sometimes nations are built on dictatorships, like in China, or even the Roman Empire so many centuries ago. If our nation is to survive, we ourselves might or must stand up for principles that bring us together. Otherwise, we will not survive. Even though we're not the greatest country in the world, because if you're from Poland or Mexico or Colombia or Ireland, you would say the same thing about your own nations. We're a successful nation, and we are a generous nation. There are certain principles that have guided us. Just like we're a beautiful church, we're a generous church, we're a prayerful church. But we as individuals must accept that or walk away from it to be whole in our lives. I often wonder, as Jesus entered different cities, you know, he was always about doing three things. He would teach, he would heal, and he would feed. We too are called to the same thing. We teach by example what is important to us. You know, practice what you preach. We're called to be people of healing in our own families and even in our own lives, because sometimes the burdens of sin or mistakes that we have made weigh us down so much that we think little of ourselves, that we cannot be forgiven. Or even more, we cannot forgive ourselves. And to be fed with the scriptures, to be fed with good reading and good things that we take into ourselves. You know, for a long time, one of the things I used to enjoy most was horror movies, Stephen King kinds of things. And I thought to myself, chop, chop, all these people were killed. Was that something that I was feeding into my own life? To teach, to heal, and to feed. It's probably a good example for all of us as we live our lives. To teach by example, to heal by our presence, by our compassion, by our charity and our kindness, and to feed others in many ways, in different ways. So as we come together as one. E pluribus unum, many but one. And so today as we celebrate Independence Day and as we remember, you know, just like in all holidays, the holidays of the United States, Memorial Day and Labor Day and Veterans Day, whatever it might be, it's just a reminder to all of us that we should pause and stop and think about what we celebrate. It's not just about meals and barbecues and games and golf, because the word holiday comes from the word holy day. And it's a time to stop and to remember and to give thanks and to pray for our nation, to pray for our church as we look to the future, hopefully open to the guidance of the Holy Spirit, fortified by the feed of Jesus in our lives as Catholics and our direction towards God the Father. May the Lord continue to bless us as individuals, because if he blesses us as individuals, then he will bless our nation. Many, but one.